Happy to have you with us today. Again, like Rachel said, my name's Kim, and I'm with Best Care Employee Assistance Program. I've been with Best Care for, about 4 years or so now, and really just have I loved my time at Best Care because there's so many different tools and resources that they give us to help us be at our best. This is really important to the conversation that we're having today because a lot of it starts with us. What are we experiencing? What are we having going on in our lives? And how does that affect me when I'm here at work and elsewhere, of course? So we'll dig into the conversation. So I don't know about you all, but we titled this We Need to Talk, How to Have Crucial Conversations. So thoughts on that phrase, we need provoke, those four little words, we need to talk. And again, it might depend who's saying it and the tone and those kinds of things, but does that give you any sense of what? So share your thoughts. I'm just curious in the chat, what does that phrase do for you? Because a lot of times we have our own perceptions, of course, around what a conversation might bring up. And as we're going to be talking today, we have a lot of differences amongst us as individuals. Thank goodness, because we need to be different, right? We need all of those differences when it comes to how we can collaborate and have different ideas and really just a lot of those things that make us creative and innovative and inventive. So Allie, yeah, instantly makes you take a deep breath. I am there with you. Sometimes it's like that. Oh, what's wrong? We immediately think something's wrong. So I appreciate you sharing that. So yeah, negative. A lot of times it's not a good positive first thought. And so as we kind of dive into this really kind of crucial conversation in itself, a lot of us may think of these conversations as difficult conversations. Now, again, we're going to be talking about our mindset because that is half the battle is what are we telling ourselves? What stories are we creating in our mind, right? Because that's a big piece of this puzzle. We all create stories that we tell ourselves if we don't have all of the information. And it's just something that we do to protect ourselves, honestly, from a human kind of biology standpoint. We have a stress response to things because our core nature is to protect ourselves from things that may harm us or affect, again, our success or relationships or anything like that. So I'm going to get you guys participating a little bit more. Like Rachel said, I like a lot of participation. If you've worked with me before, the question that I want to ask, throw your question, throw your answers in the chat. We're going to do it this way. But I want to know what things you all come across, whether it be the parts of a situation or characteristics of a person, or what are things that make in our mind a conversation difficult. Because I want to get your opinion and I want to kind of hear how our perceptions differ when it comes to difficult. And again, at the end of the day, we don't want to view these as difficult conversations because they don't necessarily have to be. So Christy, thanks. The belief, when someone believes someone else did something wrong, body language, you bet. Oh gosh, sensitive topics. And that can be a lot of different things and they can be different for each of us, right? Worrying about how people are going to respond, you bet. That fear of that reaction is a big one. When somebody's angry, when somebody's defensive, confrontation, not always fun, right? And I'm glad that you use that word confrontation because to many of us, that seems like a negative. And again, that's where our wheels start turning and we're thinking, goodness, what, you know, this is going to be hard. We're telling ourselves already that it's going to be difficult. So emotions, obviously, you've all said, the defensiveness, angry, fear on that other end, or worry, nervousness, belief, again, perception. Body language definitely goes a long way. Yeah, something that we're not anticipating, a topic that that person is not anticipating, that's for sure. I don't know about you all, but I've been caught off guard a time or two and gosh, don't necessarily know how to respond in the moment. Let's see. The attendance disciplinary conversations, yeah, feel like you're kicking them when they're down. Maybe they had COVID, came back, and a kid got sick. Yes, can definitely understand things that we do have to do just for the nature of that management process, disciplinary process. Yeah, and you're right. A lot of us don't perceive those conversations to go well. So hence the we need to talk, or my boss walks by my office and said, "Hey, come see me after your program today." Those things make us nervous because historically, we have conversation when things are wrong. We are looking for that to be something wrong, and we typically don't have a lot of conversation in the workplace when things are going really well. Hopefully we're working on changing that perception, right? Because we can have coaching conversations about great things all the time. And no matter what role we're in, you don't have to be a manager or lead or supervise any employees for this to matter, because we all have conversations with others in the workplace that can be a little stressful to think about or to prepare for. Yeah. I feel like a person's trying to get you to say something wrong, something that they can use against you or hold against you later. Yeah. Um, yeah, people that have never had constructive feedback. Yeah, and that's tough because a lot of people still fear feedback or criticism, thinking that again, people are just coming out for us. We're out to get them, and you don't do anything right at all. Yada yada. Let's see. When someone thinks they're doing something to better the department and it ends up affecting another coworker negatively. Yeah, you bet. Gosh, so many great responses, you all. And I really appreciate you sharing these, because our perception of what makes a conversation difficult to have is the first and probably most important piece of the puzzle, because we have to tell ourselves a different narrative. So we're going to work on changing that narrative and changing that mindset when it comes to what our first response is. And now I know that's not easy. Behavior change is hard. So for today, again, we're going to talk about a lot of ideas. I don't want you to overwhelm yourself with doing all the different things all at once. Take one piece of the puzzle, whether it be the mindset or first steps or preparation as we get into further steps of having these conversations, to really work on today, because one step at a time is important, and baby steps are much easier than taking a big bite that we really can't chew. So appreciate everybody's participation. Thank you for allowing my technical difficulty and giving me grace for that. Thank you so much. Okay, so let's talk about this. So based on the research, again, you're all spot on. The things that have come up in research that we've seen from managerial resources are main one being differing perceptions. Again, I see something one way and somebody else sees it a completely different opposite way, right? Now, that's not bad. I'm just making a lot of assumptions based on what I know. I may have more information than that person, right? Dave, our other training consultant at Best Care, and him and we talk about the really kind of the difficulty of having too much knowledge. Basically, the power, or really just kind of impact of knowing too much sometimes, because then we assume other people know exactly what we know. Because if I know it, why wouldn't you? But we're all experts in different areas. We all have experience in different areas. And a lot of us just assume things about others. So whether that's you see it the same way I do, or the intent. So this is an important piece. And this intent versus impact, some of you have been in some of our other, whether it be or 1 hour programs, so management boot camp or conflict resolution, any of those kinds of things, we talk a lot about intent versus impact, but it is key. What do we think about our intentions? So I don't know about you all. I still think most people are good people. And most people, especially at work, because we work so hard to hire the best of the best, that at work, people do have good intentions. Now, however, because I know I have good intentions, doesn't necessarily always mean that the way I do or share or process or give information to others will impact them the same way, right? So my intention can be good, but the way it impacts somebody else might be completely negative. The way I say something, a word I say, how I say it, again, body language, tone of voice, those kinds of things that you mentioned. So we make a lot of assumptions about intent, and especially if there's any kind of difference of opinion, right? Maybe I've always seen things differently than somebody else that I work with. So next time we sit down for a conversation, I'm immediately going to have my defenses up because I think their intent is to just make my life difficult, right? A lot of times we think they're just trying to make me look bad, make my life difficult when we disagree on things. And that can be really tough. So we talked about feelings. You all shared a lot of different thoughts when it comes to feelings. So I appreciate that. I had feelings twice, not necessarily purposely, but makes sense because there's a lot of feelings involved. And the reminder about feelings, when we are experiencing emotions, good, bad, and different, it may not always make us as reasonable or as rational, right? So again, I can be assuming really good or having really good feelings, but gosh, that might give me a different bias. I may overlook things because of my good feelings towards somebody or what I know about them or the past experience with them. But then on the opposite end, again, my feelings could cloud my judgment, could increase my inappropriate reaction or how I respond to things not being as positive, right? And that's what makes conversations difficult per se, because emotions will overrule that logic and we can cloud our judgment and understanding of others very easily. We can play the blame game. And again, we can hold on to things. I don't know about you guys, but I've held grudges for way longer than I would like to admit sometimes. Because again, our egos, they impact us so much. We are humans. We're going to do things. We're not always going to be perfect. So things might come into play, but especially my individuality. I mentioned already, we are different people, and thank goodness for that. But our diversity sometimes creates barriers. And so this is when we need to move beyond our judgment or assumptions and be curious. We're going to ask a lot of questions, right? So a lot of these conversations that have some kind of difficult ingredient per se, they are really ineffective a lot of times. Now, typically, they turn ineffective when we go straight to denial if we are having a conversation, or I'm just avoiding having the conversation completely. Now, I'm going to ask you a question about how you handle some of these situations and how the conversations may or may not go in just a minute. So, something to be thinking about. So, the stress and emotions, as I mentioned, this is when things come in between that logic and what we really are interpreting, right? And the impact that it's having on me. Just for an example, my family recently lost my mom a few months ago, and I know, just being kind of the self-aware, emotional person that I am, that if I need to have a difficult conversation about something specific, even still a few months later, I really need to prepare and be in the right mindset for it because my emotions are much higher than normal when it comes to different things that are going on in my life. And again, I share that not for sympathy, but just we all have different things going on in our lives, right? And that can really cloud our judgment. And we can overreact and assume a lot of negative intent. Other things that we've seen in terms of our differences, gosh, skill differences, resource differences, values differences, unmatched personalities. Again, I don't have all of the information, and that's typically a big piece of the puzzle. I know this much, and yet I'm assuming and creating a story in my mind about the rest. So, again, not always the easiest to do, but we're going to get over how we deal with some of those stories. All right, so let's come to the unresolved differences. Any of those things that we mentioned are obviously differences, right? They're going to interfere with our work processes. We're not going to be as productive. Our quality of our work, or the, again, performance, other things will be affected. And long term, if somebody's affected in that way, whether it be either end, whether between two people or one person and a group of people, that's going to impact morale. And employee morale and engagement is so important for our retention, especially in this certain, kind of day and age where we know resources for great employees aren't easy to come by. We need to keep everybody here that is amazing, right? And keep them happy and really work to build those great collaborative teams that can communicate through those differences. But yet, our biases sometimes lead us down different roads because that's what we're comfortable with. When we see things that we are familiar with or things that we know, that's that comfort level again. And we have to remind ourselves the growth happens outside of our comfort zone. So we're going to talk about reframing our mindset. So I want you to think real quick about really kind of your first thoughts when you have had a difficult conversation in the past, per se. And again, you can respond to this in the chat. I want to know, I'm very curious how you've handled it. But when you have a conversation with any of these things going on, or that you are viewing or anticipating as being difficult, what do you typically do? And there's no blame and shame if you say any of these. Avoid, hope the situation goes away. A lot of times I used to think, oh, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z. But then I would clam up and basically run and hide until I really learned a little bit more about how to do these things. It looks like the poll may be working for some of you. I don't know why. The others, again, don't necessarily have to try and get into it, but you can private message just me if you'd like to share your opinion. So that way you don't have to necessarily just put it in the chat, but it looks like the poll is going, it's working for a few of you. So that's awesome. Yay. Technology didn't fail me completely. Appreciate it, y'all. So yeah, we're seeing a lot of C's, which is great, but again, same amount when it comes to the A. So the B typically doesn't go well, and things don't improve or get worse. And when I say typically doesn't go well, maybe one or both of us have overreacted, or I said or did something that maybe wasn't the best. I was unprepared, maybe. Again, one of you said, if it's a topic that you're not ready for or anticipating, usually I'm not exactly great on the spot, right? A great answer here. Typically take my time to process situation, have conversations when I'm ready, but struggle having the tough conversations in the moment and need time. You bet. And that's part of the difficulty around these conversations, because a lot of us think they need to happen right in the moment, right?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, is somebody trying to share their thoughts? Don't mean to keep talking. No, no worries. I'm going to just mute. If you do want to speak up, don't hesitate by all means, because I want to hear from you all. So don't worry about anything. Awesome. All right. So, let's see. I don't think it'll let me do that. Okay, no worries. Okay, so got a great response here. So I appreciate you sharing your thoughts, and I'm glad that you tried to utilize the poll here. So really avoiding that situation is sometimes the easiest. And I know that this by experience, because I've done this a lot in my past, and have good intentions. I think all of us have good intentions. We don't know or aren't comfortable maybe doing certain things. So I'm glad that you're here if you're in that A category. Don't worry, you're not alone. And I'm sure you see by the looks of this poll, it hopefully gives you a little bit of comfort knowing that you're not alone, right? So a lot of us too, we may have a combination of answers. I've tried and I just not succeeding, not going well sometimes, right? And hopefully not making it worse. But I know that happens sometimes too, because gosh, now I'm, kind of really, just jabbing, pushing, poking the bear more, or, whatever kind of metaphor you want to think about when it comes to that. The last one, though, I'm so glad to see such a great amount of you saying typically going well and seeing good results. And so the fact that you're here for this conversation, maybe just as a refresher or to learn some additional skills, I want to hear from you throughout the rest of the conversation as we talk through the steps and how to make this easier for ourselves. Because if you're seeing the results that you want and you're doing a lot of right things, obviously. So don't hesitate to share your thoughts, because we all have great experience to learn from. So that's why I like these to be so participative and interactive. So awesome. Thanks for doing that poll, y'all. I really appreciate everybody's feedback. So one of the best ways as we start working to reframe our mindset is to remind myself what the benefit is going to be, right? If I work to accomplish these things and have these difficult conversations, now moving forward, we're going to be calling them crucial conversations. Again, you can call them whatever you want, but utilize a positive word, because that verbiage is really important to what we're telling ourselves about the positiveness or negativeness of this situation, right? Of the conversation. And so one of the best things is that self-awareness comes out of it. I may learn something about myself. This is something that I said or did that maybe had a different meaning and had negative impact. And I always want to know, always want to know if I'm doing something wrong that maybe shows disrespect or disagreement with others that I don't know if they don't tell me, right? And a lot of times we don't have those conversations because it's hard, it's not comfortable. We see it as conflict. We don't want to have conflict or confrontation, but typically only those that know us best are most comfortable sharing when we have inflicted, negative impact. And probably they know us well enough that we didn't mean to, so they know our intent is positive. But if we don't know somebody well enough, we assume that intention is negative. They're just a bad person. They're always out for somebody. We make a lot of these assumptions, right? Okay. So self-awareness being one, and we all can always learn and grow as individuals. But I can really get a chance to learn about others so much by having these conversations. And a lot of times, like I said, instead of creating judgment, but having curious conversations and asking those curious questions, to help you understand more about how other people think, behave, and work in your environment. And that's, of course, going to build stronger relationships, right? And that's the goal of everything that we do in our work, is to have those effective, collaborative relationships, to have great communication, to serve our whether it be patients or those that you serve that serve the patients, the community, whoever you work with and for. That's the goal, right? And so we're all in this together. And even if you're not a health system employee, we all have mutual interest and goals that we can find in some way, shape, or form. So again, whether it's not a commonality at work, I'm sure we can find a common thread. And again, like I said, a lot of these things, once we overcome them in a positive way, it's going to just make us that much smarter, better, more creative when it comes to that difference that we can make. Are we coming out with more creativity or innovation in our work? Or again, just seeing things from different perspectives and ideas that will bring about a new way to do things, or again, a new way to view things so that we do understand. So a lot of benefits. And that's, again, where I have to remind myself, when I start shying away, those of us that avoid or again are fearful, I have to remind myself, what am I going to get out of this? It's going to be really beneficial for us all. And this is a good thing. We have to tell ourselves that we need positive dialogue. And again, when I go into a conversation, it does not have to be negative. And I'm going to do everything in my power to have a positive, constructive dialogue, even if we disagree, right? And I think, as adults, we see some negative examples of disagreeing disrespectfully, right? I mean, I've tried to teach my kids from a very young age, but the example that I always use is seeing a baseball coach of my son's when he was very young, overreacted very much so, and went to the mound or out on the field and was yelling at the umpire, and how disrespectful it was when they were disagreeing. And these are adults. I know we're all adults, but it doesn't always feel like we're behaving as adults sometimes. And we have to remind ourselves that that's not the right way. Disagreeing can and should happen. And I know this might sound corny, but we have to really be grateful that our people that we work with care enough to disagree, to speak up, to share their opinion, to share their perspective, or to, give a different frame of mind that we might not be seeing. Because if they didn't speak up, if they don't care, they're not going to speak up, right? So people that are not engaged and not really involved, or just invested in the work that they do, a lot of times they're not going to be the ones that speak up. Sometimes we think that when we do have somebody that disagrees, they're just doing it for the sake of disagreeing. And it's not true. But again, it's those stories that we tell ourselves, right? So one of the things that we do in a lot of our different programs is create some kind of a mantra to tell ourselves to help reframe our mindset. Now, one of the great resources that we utilize for working on our mindset, learning about mindset, is the actual book by Carol Dweck called Mindset. And, it's retelling ourselves to reprogram our brains continually. What do I need to hear from that internal voice, right? What do I need to tell myself? And so a mantra or a positive affirmation, whatever you want to call it, is something that I truly need to hear. So this might be your takeaway going forward from today about how you feel about these types of conversations. And again, we're spending so much time on the front end because what we are telling ourselves matter so much more, and the preparation so much more than anything else with these conversations. So again, I need to remind myself, and the phrase that we like to use at Best Care is that, I may see it as confrontation, or somebody else might, but it really is clarification. So you don't have to call it a crucial conversation. You can call it a clarifying conversation. I'm going to seek to understand about the differences that I have with this person, right? I'm looking for a solution. And clarifying is just caring. I want to make sure that we work together well to achieve the results that we need to achieve for the organization, right? For the business, for our team, for ourselves. And at the end of the day, caring is always the right thing to do. So we like to say caring is cool. And again, I know that's pretty corny, you guys, but whatever mantra you need or whatever you need to tell yourself, I like to use sticky notes that I can, again, remind myself every day. I see it, I say it multiple times, but any type of affirmation for a thought process change does take time. So be patient. They say saying it at least 2 different times a day. So first thing in the morning, do your mantra 10 times, say it out loud, and look at yourself in the mirror so that you believe it when you say it. Again, cheesy, I know, but if we're not going to believe we're not going to look at ourselves while we're talking, we can't believe what we're saying. So twice a day, 10 times each time. So there's going to be my challenge to you for that. All right, so mantra, and we really have to focus on that mindset, right? All right. Cutting out a little bit. Hopefully, I'm not losing my connection, but y'all let me know if anything continues, okay? Okay, so what are the steps? The framework is fairly simple, and we can make it easy so long as, again, we have the right mindset around what's happening and what we're doing. So preparation, like I said, is key. That mindset is key. But for every crucial conversation, they really say that there are 3 different conversations that are kind of happening in one. There's the what happened conversation, there's the feelings conversation, and there's that identity conversation. So we're going to talk about really kind of all 3 of these here so that we know, okay, which one of these is this? And does this necessarily need to be a conversation that needs to happen? So you have to first ask yourself, what happened, right? How do you see the situation? Now, here's the thing. A lot of the crucial conversations that we need to happen fairly quickly. However, to get comfortable doing this and really working through the process of changing our mindset around how to have positive, crucial, clarifying conversations, we need to prepare for it. So if we can take any of our situations that occur and put them on pause. You know what? I'm not prepared to talk about this today. How about we schedule a meeting for tomorrow or next week? You know, whatever the case may be, so that we both have time to put our thoughts together. We don't have to react or respond in the moment. In most cases, now I know from a healthcare perspective, a lot of things need to happen right away. So the more we can practice on those conversations that aren't urgent and immediate, the more comfortable we will be to do what we need to do in the moment and to have that mindset to respond positively, right? Without reaction, without overreaction. And so really asking ourselves, where is my story coming from? What are the facts that I know to be true, right? Because more times than not, I know one thing and I fill in the blanks about the rest. So am I creating my kind of story as based off of past experience with this person? Well, I assume that this is why they're doing this because, ABC in the past. Well, again, are we giving that person the proper, proper mindset or, proper thoughts in terms of assuming positive intent? Because that's the biggest piece of this, is really just to remind ourselves, I need to push away any of those thoughts that I'm telling myself that this person is doing something just from a negative intent standpoint, and assume we all have positive intent. So, what do I think I know about the other person's perspective or viewpoint? Because, again, is it fact? Have we had a conversation about this specifically? Or am I now making assumptions about what this person thinks or why they're responding the way that they are? And what we need to ask ourselves now is, what impact has the action or whatever happened that we need to talk to them about? What impact has it had on me? And again, what could their intentions have been? We want to assume positive intent. And the last questions is probably the hardest part, right? What have I contributed to the problem possibly? I'm thinking about where, they've contributed to the problem, of course, because my focus is always on the other person, because we're human. We don't make mistakes. It's other people that do, right? So what might I have done or said or showed, or again, anything that could have contributed to whatever the situation was that occurred that we need to discuss now? So there's that what happened conversation. Now, here's the feeling conversation. Truly ask yourself in the moment, before we have any conversations, what am I feeling? What am I experiencing right now? And outside of this specific situation with this other person or people, where am I in kind of my emotions? I gave you my example a little bit ago in terms of, gosh, you know what? There are just some days that I'm experiencing a little bit more grief than others. So if possible, I might say, you know what? Let's have this conversation tomorrow after I really get a chance to have some clear thoughts around this. When, again, my other emotions aren't shadowing my perspective and my opinion about how I'm going to approach this, right? Now, the next conversation is, again, that identity conversation, and really being honest with my answers about these situations, because our identity is important to us as people. And if the situation is threatening me or potentially could have an impact on my sense of identity, we need to ask ourselves those questions. How do you see yourself in this dynamic with this person or people? I'm the boss. I like competition. I'm loyal. I'm good at developing my people. Whatever it might be, what is your role, right? And what might you need to tell yourself or accept in order to be better grounded? So basically, how do I check myself, right? How do I kind of make myself realize, okay, I am human. I'm not always right either. And what other things could be affecting me? Gosh, do I think that they're coming for my job? Do I think that they're just trying to make me look bad? What are those things that we're telling ourselves? Because that's half the battle. So if we can clear out some of those before we actually sit down and have the conversation, it's so much easier. So last thing, we need to make sure we really need to have this conversation at all. What is the purpose if I move forward now? Now, a lot of those things, as I answer some of those questions, I might think already, based on my current situation, or, not going to have this conversation right now. But is this truly important in the scheme of things for work? Or maybe is something just my preference? Am I being picky? Am I being overly perfectionistic, or really just judgy or unrational about the way I want something done? Or is it a true expectation? Because unclear expectations and how we need to do work, that's a big piece of miscommunication and difficult conversations as well. So again, what is that purpose for the conversation? And now I know if I'm moving forward to have the conversation, and if I am going to really do that, I need to set the stage, right? So I want to really kind of approach the conversation from really a different perspective, for more of that neutral perspective. It's not going to be just my point of view. So we want to share kind of our perspective with the other person about, here's what I think my perspective is. And again, I think we might have a different way of seeing these things, right? So again, these are both legitimate perspectives and viewpoints. And I want to work through this together. My purpose for sitting down and having this conversation is to come together and work better together, have stronger communication, collaboration, and really work better together, right? Let's do this together. So it's not blame and shame. I'm not finger pointing. I'm not trying to call somebody out. Actually, one of the books that we utilize as a reference for this is called No Ego by Cy Wakeman. And she talks about calling people up or calling people in to greatness, because calling somebody out is a negative perspective, right? I'm not trying to make you look bad. I want to help myself understand. Yeah. Help me understand. Thank you. Oh my gosh, that was great timing. That must be Rachel. Help me understand. It seems like that gentle approach, right? So we're really going to work hard to do that. So as we're working through things, we definitely need to set that stage. We're creating a safe space. So when I invite somebody to a meeting, come from that perspective, that gentle approach. Hey, there was, something that came up in our conversation the other day, and I just want to understand a little bit and kind of clarify how we move forward to work better together for, the overall good of our team, right? The good of the organization. So active listening is huge. And I know we all know this, but are we doing it? I need to tell myself, even if I think I know their perspective, that I don't know anything. I want to act as if this is the first time I'm hearing anything around the situation from this person, even if it's not, or put myself in their shoes, because again, I need to truly understand where they're coming from. Now, part of the problem with some of these conversations is that one person might not know how to respond right away. And again, we tend to fill in the blanks. I'm one of those people that silence is tough for me. So I keep talking and I don't give them the opportunity to respond the way we need. Silence is okay. And we need to allow them that space. Or again, allow them time to prepare for having this conversation in another way, right? So as we're discussing things, I'm truly listening. I'm truly hearing them. And I want to discuss options that might meet both of us and kind of, create that true, really just kind of collaboration and compromise, right? We might each have to give something, or we might negotiate the situation. But when it comes to the options, I might have to ask clarifying questions. Clarify, tell me more. Help me understand what you mean by that. Or, anything even more, specific. I think, understanding that is really, really important. So again, preparing your conversation is huge. So putting things down in notes, how are you going to open this? And you're not going to say it scripted in a scripted way, right? But planning what you're going to say, or planning some of the actions so that you can use the right words. And I think, things like, I know that we see things in different ways, and I really want to understand more about your perspective so that we can work better together. And approach this as the good of the relationship, right? I really want to work more effectively together. I think this will help our relationship or help the team, whatever way it needs to go. So last thing, as we talk through this, we can agree to disagree. We may not be able to come to the conclusion of what I think should happen, right? I might need to just take in this information and now work to maybe assimilate it and how I respond differently next time, or how I may change my response or reaction, maybe not use a word or a phrase that could be, you know, non-intentionally impacting somebody negatively. So again, a lot of things can come out of this, but we want to just set that stage for the positive, really collaborative conversation so that we can go forward and our communication can continue to improve. So, make sure people know, I really want to continue talking about this. Let me know, we'll continue to have these conversations, but gosh, if I ever say or do anything that ever makes you feel a certain way, I really want you to let me know. So open that door for communication, and we want to get better together. So one of the things that I included in the slides here, so if you didn't download the slides, I know they shared a little bit ago in the chat, but have a lot of different frequent scenarios, so I'm not going to go through each one of these, but we have some additional reminders for this conversation and the preparation for how to have these conversations that are really helpful. So whether it be gossip or negativity, or those people like me that overtalk or feel the need to validate, there may be drama or oversharing. Conflict is escalated, or again, maybe I've gotten back to that avoidance or shutting down perspective. It might be external, or it might be insulting. A lot of different things in terms of these examples, but one of the best things to remind ourselves is it's not about the person, it's the situation. Again, so that's why we're not saying difficult conversation, because I'm not going to cloud my judgment with that mindset. And again, this disagreement doesn't mean that they're a bad person. The situation makes us have a difference of opinion, and that's okay. We're not going to make character and value judgments. We really want to make sure that we're finding that common ground, right? And what might happen if we don't, but what are the benefits if we do? So I know there's a lot of information here. I hope some of these tidbits work to really help you set that stage for your mindset and how we can really prepare to have great and dynamic conversations with those that we work with, but this is goes well for our personal life as well. A lot of great resources. Of course, the book I'm sure you've heard of, Crucial Conversations. Radical Candor is one of my other favorites, as well as the No Ego that I mentioned. So if you have questions, please let me know. I'll stick around for answering any of those from the chat. But I know Rachel did put the reminder for getting your CE credit today in the chat. And we're at 1, so if you need to sign off, by all means, please do. But if you have any questions or comments, please let me know. You can throw them in the chat and we'll stick around. Otherwise, I hope the rest of you have a great day and stay safe and warm today if you're in the Omaha area.
That concludes the online education. I would like to thank all of our presenters for their experience, knowledge, and expertise. Be sure to subscribe so you're up to date with all of Nebraska Methodist College's continuing education offerings. Thank you.